There is a way life continues that doesn't introduce itself. It doesn't say it's beginning. It doesn't explain what's happening. It doesn't signal that something important has shifted. It just moves. For a long time, living felt like something that needed an announcement. Internally, at least, a sense of orientation, a mental marker, a subtle narration that said, "This is my life, this is me living it." Without that announcement, there was a fear that life might slip by unnoticed. But what becomes clear, here at the quiet edge of this season, is that life has never required acknowledgement in order to occur. It doesn't need to be named to be real. It doesn't need to be framed to be lived. Living unannounced is simply what happens when nothing stands in front of experience asking to be consulted. There is no ceremony, no arrival, no internal voice saying, "This is it." You wake up, you move, you respond, you rest, and none of it asks for commentary. At first, this feels almost too subtle to trust, because we're used to markers. We're used to knowing where we are in our lives. We're used to internal signals that say, progress, setback, meaning, direction. Without those signals, there can be a moment of uncertainty. Where am I now? What phase is this? What does this say about me? But those questions don't land. They appear briefly and dissolve, because life, in its unannounced movement, doesn't organize itself around phases. It organizes itself around responsiveness. What's needed now? What's present now? What's possible now? And none of that requires a storyline. Living unannounced means there's no longer a sense of performing life for yourself. You're not observing it from a distance. You're not checking in to see how it's going. You're not narrating your way through it. You're inside it, not absorbed, not lost, just present without separation. This presence doesn't feel heightened. It doesn't feel spiritual. It feels ordinary, which is why it's easy to miss. But its effects are unmistakable. There's less friction, less self-monitoring, less background tension. You're no longer trying to line your life up with an idea of what it should be. You're responding to what it is. This changes the tone of everything. Decisions feel simpler, not because they're easier, because there's less internal debate. You don't consult an identity before acting. You don't ask whether something fits your story. You look at the situation, you respond, and then you move on. There's no echo, no internal replay. The action doesn't need validation. It stands on its own. Living unannounced also changes how change itself is experienced. Before, change needed to be recognized. Something has shifted. I'm different now. This is a new chapter. Now change happens quietly. Preferences shift without explanation. Old patterns fall away without ceremony. New behaviors appear without announcement. There's no moment where you say, "This is who I am now." You simply notice later that you're doing things differently. And that noticing doesn't create identity. It's just observation. This quietness around change makes it less destabilizing. You're not trying to manage transitions. You're not trying to understand them as they occur. They happen. And because nothing is clinging to the old or announcing the new, they integrate smoothly. There's no sense of loss, no sense of arrival, just continuity without sameness. Living unannounced also alters your relationship with others. You stop presenting a version of yourself, not because you hide, because there's nothing to present. You don't explain where you're at. You don't summarize your internal state. You don't narrate your growth or your confusion. You meet people as you are in that moment, and that meeting is enough. This doesn't make you distant. It makes you real. There's less performance in interaction, less subtle signaling, less need to be seen in a particular way. You respond honestly but simply, and when the interaction ends, it ends. You don't replay it. You don't refine it. You don't wonder how it landed. You trust that if something needs attention, it will return. Most things don't. This trust is quiet but powerful. It reduces social fatigue, not because you withdraw, because you're not carrying conversations forward mentally. They happen in real time, then they're done. Living unannounced also changes how you experience purpose. Purpose used to feel like something you needed to discover, or define, or align with. Now, purpose feels unnecessary as a concept, not because you don't care, but because care doesn't require a framework. You do what's needed. You help where you can. You contribute when it's appropriate. You rest when it's time to rest. Nothing needs to be justified by a larger meaning. Life doesn't need a reason to be lived. Responsiveness replaces purpose, and responsiveness is more reliable. It adapts, it adjusts, it doesn't lock you into a direction that no longer fits. This makes life more flexible, not strategically, naturally. There's also a shift in how you relate to time. Without narration, time stops being measured internally. You're not counting days. You're not tracking phases. You're not anticipating milestones. Time passes, and because you're not commenting on it, it doesn't feel like it's slipping away. Nor does it feel like it's leading somewhere. It just moves, and you move with it. This creates a sense of sufficiency that doesn't depend on accomplishment. The day doesn't need to add up. It doesn't need to justify itself. It doesn't need to be memorable. It arrives. It unfolds. It ends. And that's enough. Living unannounced also softens your relationship with uncertainty. Uncertainty used to demand interpretation. Triggered thought, analysis, scenario building. Now, uncertainty is simply part of the environment. Like weather, sometimes it's there, sometimes it clears. You don't need to name it. You don't need to resolve it immediately. You respond to what's available, and you wait when there's nothing to do. Waiting doesn't feel like failure. It feels like participation in a slower rhythm. This makes patience less effortful. Not because you try to be patient, because there's no urgency created by narration. Urgency often came from mental projection. What if this means something? What if I'm falling behind? What if I miss something? Without those projections, urgency has no fuel. You act when action is needed. You pause when it isn't, and both feel appropriate. Living unannounced also affects how you experience yourself. There's no constant sense of me in the center of experience. Not because you disappear, but because self-reference quiets. You're not asking who you are in each moment. You're not checking alignment. You're not measuring progress. You're simply here, and here doesn't require a name. This doesn't create emptiness. It creates availability. You're available to respond, available to listen, available to adjust. Identity no longer mediates experience. It no longer filters what you can do or feel. You don't need to protect it. You don't need to reinforce it. It rests, and when identity rests, life flows more easily. There's also a deep relief in not needing to mark your life internally. No mental timestamps, no internal anniversaries, no constant reflection on where you've been. You remember when you need to. You reflect when it's useful. But you don't live inside reflection. You live inside experience. This makes life feel immediate without being intense. There's no pressure to capture moments, no urge to preserve them, no fear of missing out, because nothing is being compared. You're not watching life happen to you. You're in it. Living unannounced also changes how suffering is experienced. Difficulty still appears. Loss still occurs. Pain still arises, but without narration, suffering doesn't multiply. There's no story layering on top of pain, no identity forming around it, no interpretation turning it into something larger. Pain is felt, it moves, it changes, and because it's not being narrated, it doesn't define the landscape. It's part of life, not the meaning of life. This doesn't remove compassion, it deepens it. You meet pain, yours and others, without trying to explain it away, without turning it into something useful. You stay present, and presence is often what's needed most. Living unannounced also affects joy. Joy no longer needs to be marked. It doesn't need to be recognized as special. It doesn't need to be framed as success. It arises, is felt, passes. And because it's not captured, it doesn't create longing. You don't chase it. You don't compare other moments to it. You let it be one expression among many. This makes joy quieter but more frequent. It's not rare. It's just not highlighted. Throughout all of this, something important becomes clear. Life doesn't need narration to be lived well. Narration was a habit, a layer added by the mind to feel oriented. But orientation doesn't require commentary. It requires contact, and contact is already happening. This season began with the quieting of an inner voice. It ends with something even quieter, the recognition that life was never waiting for that voice to stop. It was always moving. You were always participating. Nothing needed to be announced. Nothing needed to be declared. Nothing needed to be concluded. Living unannounced doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like continuation without effort. There's no sense that something has been reached. No sense that something is complete. And yet, there's no sense that something is missing. Life keeps going. Ordinary, unedited, unexplained, and you go with it, not as a character in a story, not as a self to be maintained, but as a living system responding to what's here. This is not a resolution. It's a settling, not into certainty, into simplicity. The simplicity of waking up and meeting the day without commentary, of doing what's needed without narration, of feeling what arises without explanation, of resting when nothing is required. Living unannounced is not something you practice. It's what happens when nothing interferes. And nothing needs to interfere anymore. The voice has done its work, can rest. Life doesn't need to be said. It only needs to be lived. And living doesn't require an announcement. It's already happening, quietly, continuously, enough